Hello and welcome to this week's review. We're looking at an ultrasonic vinyl cleaner from Degritter. This is the Mk.II of the Degritter vinyl cleaner. Now, just to be clear, this is a review of the Mk.II Degritter from the perspective of the Mk.I and how it compares to the Mk.I. This is not a review of the basic Degritter ultrasonic cleaner itself. Now, I've done that already and I don't intend to repeat myself. So if you want to know about the underlying Degritter tech, the hardware interface, the software features and all that jazz, check out this link and you can find out all about that. In fact, if you do not know about the Degritter, it might be an idea to check that link first and then come back here. Also, in case you eventually purchase a Mk.II or Mk.I for that matter, after my own extensive research, I do not follow Degritter's recommendations on preparing the vinyl itself for cleaning in the machine. If you want to see how I do it and why, then check out the vinyl cleaning guides, links in the description down below. First up then, well, let's look at the tech differences between the Mk.I and the Mk.II. So what can you expect to see in the Degritter Mk.II? Well, on the front, there ain't a great deal of difference per se. I would say that the interface buttons are of a superior quality. They have a better feel, you might say, but that's it really. The rear is the same. All the good stuff is happening inside. So for example, firstly, the Mk.II now fluctuates the ultrasonic process itself in a kind of pulsing motion, which apparently enhances the cleaning. So what it does, it moves the power of the cleaning between 50% and 120% over a tiny period, something like 70 milliseconds. And this moves the frequency of the machine by 14 megahertz. The cleaner covers a sector of each vinyl disc as the disc rotates, scanning about 5 centimeters at a time, and each sector will experience multiple pulsations. As I say, the update is apparently a more thorough, more efficient clean. Next, well, each of the included 4 transducers, which are fitted inside the actual chassis, well, they now experience smaller frequency sweeping. This did occur in the Mk.I. It still occurs in the Mk.II, but they've tweaked it. Now, when you have these transducers in the machine, these are the things that produce the cavitation effects. These are the things that help create those tiny bubbles in the bath. It's the tiny bubbles that do the cleaning, of course, but the transducers, they create the bubbles from nothing. Now, each one of these does vary a tiny bit in terms of the frequency. When I say a tiny bit, well, one might have a resonant frequency of, say, 124.1 kilohertz. Another one might have a frequency of 125.2. So you have different sweet spots for each of these transducers. So this frequency sweep basically means that each transducer has its time in the sun. The sweet spot of each is hit, as it were. But the actual sweep effect on the Mk.II is narrower, and because of that, again, more efficient. Also, it uses less power. Next up, the Mk.II has been improved in terms of fault finding. So if a circuit ever goes south, then the Mk.II will be able to report that fault. And for example, if a transducer ever breaks down, the Mk.II will be able to report that issue as well. All of this helps to speed up repairs if required. And the next one, well, the water pump has been upgraded now to reduce foaming. And you may see some foaming if you're cleaning a vinyl disc in the Mk.I. Well, that's been reduced or even removed. In fact, I didn't see any foaming on the Mk.II when I used it in this review. And what's the benefit of that? Well, it means that you won't get any possibilities of liquid flying out of the machine during the clean. And also there was a chance that your record label might be hit by flying liquid. So the Mk.II will keep your label drier. And finally, I had the chance to test the beta version of the latest software, and that enables you to turn off the pre-soak feature. Now, I'm not a great fan of having pre-soak on all of the time because I happen to add surfactant directly to the vinyl surface before I clean. And if I do that, then the pre-soak, as was, will wash off all my surfactant and it will lower the cleaning efficiency of my particular discs. So having the ability to disable pre-soak is great news for me. Now, in the future, I will be doing additional testing on the Mk.II, and I will show why the pre-soak feature can be very effective and very useful indeed, but that's for the future sometime. Now for the test, I decided to test two LPs. One newly released and unplayed from the electronica group Plaid. It includes guitars and drums plus cymbals as well as synths. The other is this album from the band Japan, much older of course, and second-hand to boot. And what's worse, a live track, which is fairly nasty because sonics are not the best in the first place. Now, as I've already hinted, my typical cleaning cycle, well, that consists of adding surfactant to each side of the vinyl disc, then cleaning in the degritter, and then drying in the degritter. To repeat, that's one cycle, and I gave each vinyl here a minimum of 6 cycles. Now, in my own extensive tests, which took an awful long time to do, I found that the sonic improvements from the degritter, well, they started to decrease after the 4th cycle. They sort of moved down from that high point. Cycle 5 is definitely worth it. Cycle 6, in my opinion, is also definitely worth it. But after that, improvements are minimal, and that's why I stopped at 6. But even so, with the Plaid disc, to make doubly sure, I extended that to 8 cycles. So I basically cleaned this Plaid disc in the Mk.I degritter for well over 2 hours. Well over 2 hours. For the Japan disc, well, I'm pretty sure I've already given this disc a full 6 cycles in the past. But I wasn't absolutely sure, so I gave it another 6. So I reckon, actually, I've done 12. So well over 3 hours of cleaning on that one. And what's the upshot of that? Well, basically, after that loss, there should be nowhere else to go for the Mk.I in cleaning terms, and in terms of sonic improvements. If the Mk.II provides sonic improvements across both LPs, then the reason for that will be solely down to the improved design of the Mk.II itself. Oh, and I must say, after I did all of those cycle cleans, I finished off with a rinse on each disc. So after the Mk.I cleans and the rinse was finished, I listened to each on my hi-fi, my reference hi-fi. Then I inserted the review vinyl into the Degritter Mk.II and then cleaned each LP for one single cycle, and then a rinse, and then I listened to any possible changes. Now, I started with the harder task, in my opinion, and the newly released unplayed Plaid LP. Now, it's basically clean, of course, but the grooves are still full of release agent. This stuff needs to be removed thoroughly. And the result? Well, to begin, when I was just listening to the music itself, I was admiring the creative talent from Plaid. I wondered how they kept releasing these musical treasures. The quality was top notch. I was very impressed with this album, incidentally. And I also wondered how they maintained their high standards. When I was reviewing this particular disc in the Degritter, well, I then thought the same about the team from Degritter, because this Mark II is stunning, absolutely stunning. I was completely surprised at the improvements, because I really didn't believe that the Mark I could be improved by so much. Via the Mark II, in relative terms and compared directly to the Mark I, bass was a complete beast, a real beast. The lower frequencies tightened and were measurably denser in terms of response. The extra focus around the lower frequencies, well, that added further punch and power. As for the mids and the treble, well, they hit a real high-end sound feel, complex and intricate, blending subtle fine details to weave a fine web around the soundstage, giving a focus and precision, but a level of detail that added both layering and 3D sound. Features that I struggled to experience properly and fully via the Mark I. Treble offered fragility, but also presence in how it delivered the metallic weight of each cymbal hit, while the human voice punctuation at the very start of this track sounded less of a cough from the Mark I and more its true guttural grunt. And let me repeat, this level of performance was derived from a brand new record already cleaned over 8 rather grueling cycles by the Mark I. Now, after I cleaned the Japan LP in the Mark I, there was a noticeable harsh edge across the tip of the upper mids. Now, this edge wasn't egregious, didn't have me placing my hands over my ears, but you could hear it. It was there, it was noticeable. The unstable mid-range and treble extremes highlighted the music, and not in a good way. This live album showed how out of control the frequencies were in this large auditorium. It's the way with live albums. Most of them sound like this. Most live albums lack control, and the sound can add a kind of a chaotic feel to the presentation. So, after cleaning with the Mark II, well, I was wrong. I was completely wrong. The edgy mids I mentioned, they were not the result of the live recording. They were not the result of the auditorium. They were the result of release agent residue that had not been removed by the Mark I. With that now gone, because the Mark II did remove it, so had the mid-range edge. That was gone now. That had disappeared. And I have to say, I was surprised and just a little bit shocked. Now, the music, yes, it did still sound thin and weedy and uncontrolled, and the auditorium remained cavernous and all that kind of live stuff. But this mid-range edge, which kind of dominated throughout the entire LP, gone now. And you know what? I've said this before. I can't remember when, on an earlier review in this channel and on my website. It makes me wonder, when we judge the sound of vinyl and we declare that this particular pressing sounds terrible and the mastering is just pathetic, and on and on and on, when I do wonder if basically those particular people and me, when I judge vinyl, if we're just listening to a vinyl that hasn't been cleaned properly. And I'm not talking about dust here, I'm talking about the hard to remove release agent, which you can only get rid of with a machine that has abrasion as part of the cleaning process. So that means ultrasonic, or on the other end of the scale, a disco anti-stat, because that has abrasion. But the ultrasonic, far more capable, far more efficient, far more thorough. On this LP though, bass was now tighter and better controlled, mids offered an improved structure, not just superior sound, the actual soundstage was now better organised. Vocals provided enhanced texture now. In fact, the entire performance was improved right across the board. So that's basically it. That's the review. How, in that case, should I sum this whole thing up? Well, let me give you a few final thoughts. I'll do some pros and cons, and then I will give you a rating. Now, I was expecting a sort of graduated improvement or series of improvements from the Mk.I through to the Mk.II. I was expecting to say that the improvements were small, enhancing slightly here and there, maybe adding peaks of performance at this or that point. But no, for a vinyl cleaner, and considering the expectations that you place on a vinyl cleaner of any sort, the sonic improvements from the Mk.I to the Mk.II were large, they were impressive, and sometimes startling. Right across the sonic spectrum, I heard major enhancements, even the restructuring of an entire soundstage. That is not minor fare. That is significant. If you have the budget and you're looking for your first ultrasonic cleaner, then the Mk.II Degritter is your choice. There is no doubt about that. Now, if you own a Degritter Mk.I, what do you do? Well, the Mk.I remains excellent. Sure, it's now the second best vinyl cleaner in the world, but it remains top notch, and I highly recommend it. I still highly recommend it. Question is, should you upgrade from a 1 to a 2? Well, that's an intensely personal decision, and it's really up to you. It's up to your budget as well, and it depends how fanatical you are about vinyl cleaning. And you might want to be cautious about taking buying advice from a vinyl madman. So look at your bank balance and take a sensible view. If it was me though, personally, if I had just completed a private demo after hearing these results, I would have no choice. I would start saving. Bottom line then, well, some might say the Degritter is on the cutting edge of vinyl cleaning right now, but I would disagree. And why is that? Well, I would say that the Degritter team is the cutting edge. Pros and cons. And well, firstly and dominatingly, the sound improvements right across the sonic spectrum. Improved from top to bottom, from left to right. Amazing stuff. If you're moving from Mk.I to 2, you've got a familiar interface. The chassis really hasn't changed. So you're up and running in seconds. The only differences are if you have not been keeping up with the software improvements. Make sure you have the latest version. There are some additional features involved in that. Fault finding. I like the fact that your Degritter can talk to you and let you know what's wrong, and that will speed up repairs. And upgradable software. That continues with the Mk.II. That fault finding is one example, and there may be other little gems to come in the future. But basically, for the system as a whole, the upgradable software is a great boon. And in the bad section, well, absolutely nothing at all. And well, look, some people might gripe about the price, but I think it's at that price for a rather good reason. So that's the reason why I'm going to give the Degritter Mk.II a rather healthy 9 out of 10 deeply groovy. Why, some of you might be saying, aren't you giving this thing a 10 out of 10? Well, 10 out of 10s are very rare, and I only give those to revolutionary products. The Mk.I was the revolution. The Mk.II only improves upon the revolution. So that's why the ceiling on this particular one can only ever be 9 out of 10. So I'm giving it maximum marks on that score, if you catch my drift. Congratulations then go to Degritter. And that's it, folks. Thank you very much for staying to the end of this particular video, and thank you too for all of your support. If I could ask you, possibly, if you haven't done so already, to subscribe to this particular channel, and if you can click on the like button below, that would be rather nice. Also, further down there are the links to my vinyl cleaning guides. One is for the manual vinyl cleaning, that's focused on the Disco Anti-Stat, and the other one is based or focused on record cleaning machines. I do have one in the works looking at ultrasonic cleaning. That's not out yet. However, as I said earlier on, the nature of preparing your vinyl for cleaning is the same across manual record cleaning machines and ultrasonic. It doesn't change. It's the best vinyl preparation, and it includes adding surfactant to the actual surface of the record. So I go into detail as to what to do, pictures and captions and stuff, takes you through it piece by piece, step by step. And there's a toolkit of all the bits you need and why. I try and explain why with everything. So each guide is pretty big, 8 to 10,000 words or so. Use it as a reference. Just pick the bits out you need. There's also some links to videos, and check it out. Anyway, also in the description, there's links to my Facebook group, my website, and my Patreon page. If you can support me on Patreon, keeps this channel going, and it funds this channel, and there are exclusives over there you won't find over here. So please have a little look, have a wander about, and see if you like what you see. And if you can support me, great. I'll be back on Friday for hi-fi news, etc. Hope to see you then. Until then, folks, bye-bye for now.